Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Careers in FM series. I'm Michelle Connolly, and I'm really pleased to be hosting today's conversation as we continue to explore the diverse and evolving world of workplace and facilities management. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jack Prady, Managing Director of WPS Facilities Management. Jack, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with me. It's great to have you here.
Pleasure. Yeah. Look forward to it.
So before we start, just to add a little bit of context, in this series we speak with professionals from across the industry to highlight the many different career paths available within FM. It's an industry that we all know is often, operating behind the scenes, but plays a very vital role in how organisations function day to day. Through these conversations, we aim to really give insight into how careers develop in this space and the variety of different roles that exist and the opportunities available for those looking to get into or grow within the sector. It's also a really good opportunity for us to shine a light on the businesses shaping the industry, particularly those that are growing and innovating in exciting ways. So, Jack, I'd love to start by you telling us about your own career journey into FM and what initially attracted you to the sector and how your career's really evolved over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I started out as an apprentice nearly 20 years ago now, I think. So,
Yeah,
young 16-year-old, hungry to learn, but, equally earn at the same time. So, the opportunity came about, I think, when it was a skills advisor in high school, opened up the career pathway. It was clear, I think, full-time education probably wasn't for me. So,
yeah,
which went against the grain, I think, and somewhat my parents kind of led a local council role for 40 plus years, but kind of off I went. And when I look back now, it's my apprenticeship it really was a fantastic grounding. I
mm,
think I was learning about building services in particular, but
yeah,
you kind of building like resilience and discipline, integrity. So at the time, obviously, I was probably unaware of them sort of soft skills, but when
mm,
you're working with the older generations and you had to be on site for 7 a.m. no matter where it was in the country, and
yeah,
you had to be on the your pickup point. If you was a minute late, you'd always get
mm,
the phrase, the bus wouldn't wait for you.
yeah,
um and that sort of grounding and getting, doing the butty run, year one, year two
yeah,
in apprentice, and you had
mm,
to get the bacon butties in for 10 o'clock. They had a 15-minute window to eat, so if you weren't there at 10 o'clock, you'd be kind of brutally criticised and stuff like that.
yeah,
But I look back now, and it was a great grounding. And at the same time, I had to be inquisitive, I had to ask questions, and which you look back, it took a lot of courage as well, because
yeah,
there's some characters there for sure. But
mm,
I think every year, you would get sort of more responsibility, and it was light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. More responsibility, more respect as you kind of went through the kind of 4 year apprentice. But
yeah,
I think over time, I think my passions evolved. I completed my apprenticeship. I went on to HNC in building services,
mm,
and that was probably where I was a little bit more focused on kind of customer and business needs. So, is the customer happy? Are we making money? Are we delivering that project on time? So
yeah,
it's probably a natural shift for me into management. But
mm,
fortunately, my bosses could kind of see the potential. But yeah, I do remember it was a very difficult moment for me to go into the office and speak about my passions,
mm,
because I was thinking, well, actually, what about if they say no?
yeah,
What am I going to do, kind of thing. But you take a bit of courage and you go into the office, and then yeah, I think the rest was almost history. You kind of move into that office environment. You grab a cup of tea whenever you want, and it just felt so strange. But the kind of management journey, I think, really took off unofficially, with a company called Hogteeth, who later got bought out by SPE. But working in that PFI scheme, it's kind
mm,
of you really kind of earn your contract management stripes, I think, so to speak. The risk of failure in PFI schemes, that heating not being on quick enough to
yeah,
heat the school, or
mm,
lighting lux levels not right in the classroom or laboratories. There's serious penalties. So the whole kind of stakeholder management and root causing, um, work order time durations and things like that. It was a great learning curve. And I probably reference back a really strong mentor as well, who I'm still to this day really, really friendly with, but a guy called Steve Gladwin. He ran the business and then went on to consultancy, but he pushed me, he gave me incredible opportunities, and more importantly, I think he gave me his time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
yeah, and then yeah, it's very important. Yeah, very important. And you kind of like you grow up, don't you? And you think, are you adding value and things like that? And sometimes a set of ears is super important.
yeah.
So yeah, and then fast forward. I mean, I've worked with some big organisations like CBRE and Vinci.
Yeah.
Vinci was a great place for me to work. It was obviously a big tier one, and I worked with some talented people and a customer I think who really got the best out of me. So that was Shell, global arrangement,
Yeah.
and I was assigned to kind of the UK and grew with that, and later ran that account and got account director of the year in 2021, which again is baffles me a little bit, but it was a tremendous experience, and it was just great to kind of celebrate. And I got some key assignments which I think helped kind of shape, and I think my time there was kind of game changing in that sense. And
Yeah. So from that initial, the initial step in through that apprenticeship and moving through all these different roles, you're gaining the experience all that time, different types of clients. I think for people coming into the industry who don't really know what FM is, it's covering such vast array of different types of sectors and contracts and that sort of thing. Were there any sort of standout moments or anything you could point to that tells people a little bit more about that, the differences, and when you thought, wow, I've really I've hit something that I haven't seen before.
yeah, I think good question. I think, like I say, there's so much variety in my career. I think one of the kind of the benefits of kind of coming to the FM industry was the technical skills. The technical skills of working in construction, and they definitely kind of like served me well in terms of just having that confidence. I think
Yeah.
that was important to really generate confidence, and even back at Hogteeth, I still got stuck in, even in management, get stuck in, get the help, get the headset on, and take the job, listen to the customer, and really feel it from the ground up, be in somebody else's shoes. So I think, yeah, I think that really kind of helped, just having that technical grounding, moving sort of from construction into FM was a big kind of milestone for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so your career's obviously evolved over time to your current position, being managing director of WPS. Can you tell us a little bit more about WPS facilities management and really, the services you provide and the types of clients and contracts that you're working on?
Yeah, definitely. And it just to kind of peel it back, really, I think, in most recent years, purpose and passion has become more clearer. I think sort of 10 years ago, I think it was, it probably wasn't even in my vocabulary, so to speak. But I think when you go through sort of a life changing moment or whatever, like I probably did when my mum passed away early, I think that it was almost a life shock that raises questions on your why, and again, something I never connected with prior. So I think fast forward now, I've got an incredible passion to really help sort of medium sized organisations and people just realise their potential. So the purpose and the why are incredibly important to me, and obviously I'm kind of beyond proud to take the position now where I work for the Waits family, as MD of the WPS facility management business, and freedom to fly, and absolute honour of leading a fantastic leadership team to deliver our ambition. So we're only here once, no regrets.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen. But
Yeah.
in terms of who we are, we're a commercial hard FM business. So WPS is probably made up of 3 divisions. So you got hard FM, you got housing maintenance, and got the Liberty M&E renewables business as well. But essentially the maintenance division of the Waits Group, which I guess for those that may not know, Waits Group has been around for hundreds of years, and I think delivered around about 3 billion in sort of revenue last year. But for an FM business, and we've got kind of a nice sort of small to medium agile sort of business that hopefully is going places. But in terms of who we are, I mean, we've set a clear strategy for the next 3 to 5 years. So we've found a way of kind of turning trust into a strategic asset.
Mm.
So that kind of we use that to kind of accelerate our team growth and strengthen client partnerships as well. So you'll find that the heartbeat of our purpose is around trust. Trusted to maintain the places that matter. So
Yeah.
in terms of kind of where we deploy services and work is we work with a wide variety of clients. We operate in the managing agent workplace space up and down the country. The science and tech space is a great grounding for us, which is growing. Further education, blue light, and also high demanding critical environments. Warner Brothers, Mercedes Benz, where if you don't have the essential services maintained and things can go wrong, the
Yeah.
consequences are
Mm.
huge. So in that sense, I think if you look about FM as a career of choice, where else do you get that variety? Working with
Absolutely.
different customers, working with different needs, shaping
Mm.
different solutions. It's fantastic in that sense. So yeah, approximately 400 people probably in the business, with probably over 50% of our teams in the technical engineering space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, the culture and spirit of the organisation, quite biased, I think, but unlike anything I've experienced before, we've got a connected team. I think it's realigned now with a purpose, and
Mm.
like I say, I'm beyond it
Yeah.
proud and kind of excited to see where we can get to.
Good, good, yeah. Back to that purpose and that why. Hopefully, living that out at the moment.
Exactly, yeah, yeah.
So, in terms of things like skills and competencies, what do you believe are essential for success in with a career in facilities management, and how would you say you've deployed or developed those skills throughout your own career?
Yeah, I think going back to the kind of earlier question around how did the apprenticeship and how it
Mm.
shaped. I think going back to kind of three themes: resilience, discipline, integrity. I think are soft skills that are so
Yeah.
important
Mm.
to thrive, and not just FM, I guess any sector.
Mm.
Um, but and then they were kind of developed, I think, with just getting stuck in, like saying yes. I was pretty much always the first person just to you know, put my hand up and grab it, ask questions, listen. I think, once you've either overcome the obstacle or not, either way, I think there's huge lessons there, and
Mm.
you don't half kind of accelerate and progress. And certainly that is definitely relevant for the kind of the mistakes that you made, and I made a few along the way, that's for sure. But
That's how you
you
learn,
know,
right?
yeah, no, exactly, and not getting too big for your boots. I think as well.
Mm.
I referenced being on the help desk and diagnosing problems and trying to remote fix and things like that. But
Mm.
again, don't be too far away from kind of the customers and the stakeholders, and I guess you'll go far. But I
Mm.
think once you've gone through that process of um, just jumping in and doing it just really allows you to understand different stakeholder needs and
Yeah.
management, and all that.
Mm.
You fast forward and you go, what leader do you want to be? I mean, ultimately you've seen some really good stuff and you've seen some really bad stuff. So it
Yeah.
just allows you to really kind of carve that out, and hopefully along the way you can keep being authentic. I think
Yeah.
authenticity wins, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Do, are there any things that you found really useful in terms of, either training or mentoring or that sort of thing through your career? Obviously, the different roles, and you've mentioned the apprenticeship route and how that's brought you through. And you've also mentioned having a great mentor. Is there anything sort of as you've gone further into the career that you'd really point to that's been useful?
yeah, so I've been part of kind of a coaching group, and I think along the
Mm.
way, along the journey, I've been part of kind of a mentoring group as well, where
Yeah.
that sort of third party lens, not involved in your direct line, and
Mm.
someone who you can really voice to and trust is, I think,
Yeah.
it was imperative, especially like for imposter syndrome, right?
Mm.
You jump into a management position and you go, all right, this sounds great. You've got company car or whatever, and you've got kind of a higher salary and good benefits, and you've got
Yeah.
empowered, a little bit more empowerment to make a change.
Mm.
But that imposter syndrome can certainly eat you up. So
Yeah.
the more people you can speak to and network on a like for like basis, or certainly higher up, um, you quickly find out we're all human.
Yeah.
We've all made mistakes, you know what I mean? But I think what sets you apart is you, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, I'd say, you know, the mentorship, the coaching, surrounded by really strong leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was huge
Yeah.
for my career in particular. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's anyone you speak to that imposter syndrome's not there with, is it? You know, at all levels. So yeah, it's just part of life, isn't it? And being
It
human.
is.
I think.
It is. And sometimes you need that, you know. Sometimes you need to be vulnerable, don't you? And sometimes you know, you just need to kind of let your hair down
Yeah.
and talk, I
Yeah.
think. And sometimes you know who is your triangle, who's, you know, who is that person.
Yeah.
If you've not got someone, I'd definitely encourage you to kind of speak up around that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just moving on to trends, then. What do you see as the trends that are, you know, shaping the future of facilities management, and really why you feel it's an exciting career to consider?
Yeah, I mean, it must be exciting. I've been in it for 20 years.
As of most
But no,
things, definitely.
yeah, I've tried to answer this so many times, and I think the starting point, I think, in FM is, I think we reside and we live in a really sort of highly fragmented marketplace, don't we? I mean, you know, I read a stat around. I think there's no FM provider that's got more than 10% of the market share,
Yeah.
which, you know, creates incredibly competitive environment, but it also shows you how diverse the
Mm,
client's needs are, you know, and diverse needs, diverse companies and people create do create a compelling space to thrive and innovate. I firmly believe that. I think just going down a level, I think, you know, some companies are incredible at technology and early
mm,
adopters of AI seem to be
yeah.
winning.
Mm,
But, you know, the same company as well may struggle with, you know, customer experience or perhaps self delivery. So I think, you know, there's some fantastic companies that you can learn from, but, you know, but equally make a difference in.
yeah.
So, you know, I think I'm not saying it's a trend, but people, you know, people are kind of attracted by people who seem to be marketing, you know, this different innovation and technology. But I think me looking back, we spoke about purpose a lot,
Mm,
Michelle, but it's almost like not a case of which company or who. It's almost like, you know, it's more of a case of like connecting with yourself and
yeah.
understanding your purpose
Mm,
and what are you
mm,
passionate about. I think in terms of, you know, applying that focus and applying that energy. But
yeah.
um,
And
yeah,
carving that, you know, that niche and your differentiator, I suppose, isn't it? Because such a vast market that there's almost enough to go around, isn't there? Like, you know, we've said there's no clear single, you know, players that's taking that much of the market. So it's how can you bring the value in your own way as a business and individuals.
yeah, no, definitely. And this is why obviously EDI, you know, the EDI and the ESG are super important as well. So if you think about
Mm,
obviously the amount of companies in the fragmented marketplace and, you know, the different value propositions from different companies, um, you know, I think that's that creates variety, doesn't it? And I think, you
yeah,
know, when you look at like the careers for FM, and, you know, when you speak to somebody, everybody's come from almost a different path, or, you know, people found about FM by luck or chance.
yeah,
You know, that's why I think it creates an interesting pathway. You know, if you're really passionate about kind of environmental and ESG and delivering social value, then guess what?
yeah,
There's a real space for us for you here.
yeah,
If you're
yeah,
passionate about technology, or, you know, from a technical engineering point of view, you know, you want to grow, then guess what? There's a career for you here. Or, you know,
yeah.
if it's help desk or frontline teams, or if it's customer experience.
Mm,
And there's so many of the vast array of sectors as well that we work in, different value propositions for different sectors, let alone different businesses. So I think that's why FM has been super successful in terms of
mm,
creating, you know, diverse kind of career paths.
yeah. And what sort of advice would you give to anybody looking to step into the sector, or somebody that's looking to develop their career within it?
Yeah, great question. I think probably a bit of a summary of what we just spoke about, really. But, you know, early on, embrace the learning curve. I
Mm,
think, you know, it will shape you. Um, and kind of finish what you started, I guess, is probably number one. Build strong relationships. We talked about mentors, but, you know, this industry is driven by people.
yeah,
So success will rely on your ability to collaborate at every level. Exec, field. Everyone's important, and it's important to build strong relationships. This industry is a small one.
Yeah.
I think we spoke about mentorship as well, didn't we? It's probably three.
Yes. Yeah.
And then remember the purpose, like behind your why. I mean, if you've not found it yet, that's fine. It does take a while, or it certainly took me time. But remember the purpose and behind your why, and I think everything else will take care of itself in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Have you done a lot of reading around that? Do the Simon
Yeah,
Sinek things and all that sort of stuff?
yeah, he resonated. Yeah, he
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
resonated, and I went on this podcast hunt, and I found this, I think, small podcast where it was 10 minutes of him just zoning in on it, and I was like, it sounds easy, doesn't it? But it's not. But I think
Yeah.
he's give some useful tips and tricks to you know help you sort of just unravel what's in your head. Yeah, he's a fantastic leader, isn't he?
Absolutely. Is there anything else, Jack, that we haven't spoken about that you would like to deliver to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. I think what I would say is I think the industry and everybody's got a duty to do more in terms of putting FM on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
And something we're trying to work out from a strategic point of view is how do we do that? Because if it wasn't for the skills advisor to come into high school for
Yeah.
an hour,
Mm.
I could have been on a completely different path. So I think there's a lot of work for us to do, but I'm quite excited about how we do that in terms of how do we get into that space where
Yeah.
it's not too late.
Yeah.
Um,
Talk outside of our own circles, and yeah, like that worked for you, didn't it? Careers advice came in, and you've ended up coming into this industry. So more of that. Plus,
yeah.
I always talk about the fact that a lot of industries are on the news, aren't they? FM's not, and why are we not? Because we're delivering such amazing things. We're kind of everywhere, aren't we, in FM? But we're not necessarily out there shouting about it in the press, so it doesn't resonate. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you go back to kind of the COVID days, right, where it almost come to light, the power of FM, didn't it? And I think
Yeah.
we've got to kind of keep that spirit high, keep that spirit open, and work together. Work together. I think everybody's facing an emerging talent shortage, and
Mm,
whether it's engineers or other kind of skill sets coming into the industry. So stronger together, I guess.
yeah.
There's more work for us to do.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jack. I've really enjoyed hearing about your career journey and the work you're doing with WPS facilities management and weights. That's great, and thank you to everyone who's been watching or listening. Hopefully, this conversation's given you a better understanding of some of the opportunities available within workplace and facilities management. We'll be continuing the Careers in FM series with more conversations like this, so please keep an eye out for future interviews. And thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.